Hi small business owners, it's Western Singh from Sharon Law Firm. Today I want to discuss about a lease assignment and a sublease. As we have discussed in previous video about the assignment, an assignment is basically a complete transfer of all rights and responsibilities a seller has in a particular lease which is created between seller and the landlord, and basically the seller is transferring the complete lease to the new buyer, and that new buyer becomes a new tenant, and that relationship of tenant landlord goes with the landlord and this buyer now. Okay, then what about a sublease? A sublease is a kind of relationship which is created between seller and buyer, that the seller is providing some chunk of lease, and most of the time it's the timing of the lease, either it's the option or it's the time period left but not complete time period left, and the seller just want to transfer that to the buyer so that buyer can work on its business for a number of years, and then the seller can enter into that business. So that's basically a sublease. Okay, why these transfer, like what kind of lease transfer it is, why it is important? It is important because an assignment is basically you are creating a relationship with the landlord and the new buyer. So the new buyer becomes new tenant, and you have direct access to landlord, and you have the contract with the landlord, and so your landlord still remains the main person. But in a sublease, on the other hand, the buyer and seller are having the tenancy relationship contract. The seller becomes a sub-landlord and the buyer becomes a subleasee, and you don't have any contract with the main landlord. So you can understand from that why it is important, because you have this separate agreement which have nothing to do with the agreement which the seller have with the landlord. If something got violated by the seller with a lease, the main master lease agreement with the other landlord who is the main landlord, then what happens? Suppose, for example, as per your arrangement with the seller and between the buyer is paying rent of $10,000 to the seller, and the seller has the lease agreement between the main landlord for suppose $8,000, and the seller is paying not even penny of it to the main landlord. So then basically the seller is violating the agreement with the main landlord, and now you have a problem, because the main landlord will be sending a letter to the seller and also to any person who is possessing the land currently, basically saying that as per our main lease, that this particular term is not performed yet, and the main tenant is just in default now. And you are thinking, I have been providing the seller all these payments, so I'm fine with that. No, unfortunately you are not fine with that, unless and until you have during your business purchase process you have some agreement recognizing your agreement between a tenancy agreement between seller and the buyer. If you don't have any recognition agreement with the landlord have no agreement with you, and so whatever payment you are giving, of course you can ask for the seller, but what about the business you are running, your possession right? And that possession right is in danger now. So you have to make sure, so what kind of tenancy relationship you are getting into while you are buying a business, because most of the time the seller don't even understand, and of course the buyer most of the time don't understand, because they go to some document creating service or something, and they ask, okay, I want to transfer the lease to the buyer, and just create a document. Seller brings the document to the buyer, and buyer reads it. Buyer only looks for some important terms, which is mostly okay, how many years of lease I'm getting, and what's the rent, and what's the increase in rent. So those are like few of the terms the buyer will see. Buyer don't even see, okay, who is the main landlord, is there any master agreement currently in place. Buyer don't even know, and buyer signs it, and now the buyer is just stuck on that agreement. And if that agreement is a sublease, for example, that the seller has created some kind of arrangement that if you default, then I will come back and take possession of this business and kick you out. Or a relationship, okay, I have 10 years of lease, I'm only giving you 8 years of lease. So that kind of arrangement, it's a sublease. And your sublease needs to be recognized by the main landlord. If it's not recognized, then if suppose this middle seller who is still the main tenant doesn't perform, or you are giving all your performance in and this main tenant is not performing as per the lease or not transferring the rent, then you have a big problem. So you have to really make sure in what kind of relationship you are. If you just read the document, by reading the document and just looking the title will not hold, and it will not control in what kind of relationship you are. So your content of the document is more important than its title, because most of the time you have on those documents misleading title. It says an assignment of lease or something like that. But actually what the seller was doing, the seller was still keeping the right to come in possession of this business and just being as a main tenant. Even if he writes an assignment on the document, it doesn't count as an assignment. So when it just goes to court, the court will determine based on the content and how you have structured this relationship. So you have to just make sure in what kind of relationships you are getting. Otherwise, your whole business is on the line. The main tenant can kick you out that, okay, this main lease is not performed by this main tenant, and anybody located in that location, the main landlord can kick you out. So it's always good to review your lease. Even if you have an existing relationship, just go to a legal professional, or if you like, we can review your lease and let you know in what kind of relationship you are, or if you are going through a business transfer, or if you want to get a draft reviewed, or if you want to create a new draft assignment or sublease. It's really important because your whole life is online, and you don't want to mess up with that. So again, these videos are just for informational purposes, and you should not just try to resolve your legal issue by just looking at this video. Just go to a legal professional for legal advice, and always just work in your business, perform well, and let us know if you have any legal worries, so we can discuss and see what kind of resolution we would be able to provide you. And just again, look for our videos and the series of videos on this legal issues about a lease and about a business transfer. Thank you.